So on behalf of CBI and all our guest speakers, a very warm welcome to everyone. Thank you all for joining the webinar on how to improve worker happiness in the apparel industry. So my name is Mirta Haas and I work as a program manager at CBI. Before we get started, let me just quickly tell you a little bit something about the tool that we're currently using for this session, GoToWebinar. Although you might not be familiar with it, it's actually quite a simple tool and there's only a very few elements in your menu that are relevant. So kindly be informed, first of all, that we cannot hear or see you. So you can wave at us, you can shout at us, but we simply won't notice. However, if you do have a question, you can always post this question under the field questions in this menu. And I really encourage you to do so throughout the whole session, but also during the Q&A at the end of this session. For the sake of time, we might not be able to answer all the questions, but we will do our best we can, and some we will even answer in written form after the webinar. Also in the background, there is another CBI colleague available to answer some of your questions. Please be informed that this webinar is recorded and will be published on our website for further review or sharing. Finally, at the end of the webinar, we kindly ask if you can complete a short survey to share your feedback. So today, I'm actually not alone, and I'm very excited to introduce you to our three wonderful speakers who really have in-depth knowledge on today's topic, the importance and the steps you can take on how to improve worker happiness. So Natasha, Giovanni, and Frans, can I ask you to quickly turn on your cameras to show yourself to the audience? Sasha, can you turn on your, yes, excellent, we have everyone. Okay, thank you so much. Let me show you what we have in store for you by quickly going through today's agenda. After a very short introduction from my side, we will hear from Frans Tilstra, who is also one of the main market researchers for CBI's apparel studies. And Frans will walk you through the facts and the figures on staff recruitment and retention. We will then go to Natasha, who is not only a confidential advisor at the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences, but she's also a best-selling author and public speaker. So I'm very excited and looking forward to hear what kind of tips she has on how to create a safe work environment in the apparel industry. And last, but most certainly not least, we will hear from Giovanni, who probably doesn't even need an introduction anymore, as he has such an incredible wealth and experience and network in the apparel industry and has supported CBI in many different ways over the years. So Giovanni is the owner of Forward in Fashion, and he will tell you today a bit more about the challenges and the benefits of attracting and maintaining healthy, happy, and productive employees. As always, we will conclude with a Q&A where experts will answer your questions. But now let me just give you a little bit of a short introduction who CBI is, because this webinar is being organized by CBI. So CBI is the Center for the Promotion of Sustainable Production and Trade between low and middle income countries and Europe. We are part of the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, RVO, which is the executive branch of the Dutch Ministry of Economic Affairs, and we are being funded by the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So CBI partners with SMEs and their ecosystems to strengthen their social and environmental sustainability. We do this by connecting SMEs to the European markets, and we focus on promoting and creating decent jobs as well as stimulating sustainable trade and production. So the SMEs are really our starting point, and we offer practical solutions to eliminate bottlenecks experienced in the value chain. In many cases, a major barrier is, for example, the lack of access to good quality market information. So our approach is twofold. First, we implement projects in our focus countries, and secondly, we provide market information on how to export your products and services to the European markets. CBI is active in 23 countries, mainly in Africa, and our work spans across 14 sectors, predominantly in agriculture, but also in the service sectors such as the apparel industry. If we can go to the next slide. As you can see here, we work with a very close, diverse group of stakeholders, such as sector associations, expert promotion agencies, ministries, and so on. And over the years, we have built an extensive network of international and local experts that we actively involve in our projects. Next slide. So as I just mentioned, CBI mainly implements projects in our focus countries, and we have on average around 40 projects running at any time, which last around 4 to 6 years. And over the years, we have worked with over 10,000 SMEs from over 70 countries and connecting them to buyers, to partners in the European markets. And many of our projects focus, for example, on export marketing, matchmaking, product development, branding, certification, corporate social responsibility, and so on. And as you can see here on the slides is a little bit of an overview of some of our current projects in apparel. For the sake of time, if we go to the next, I will only delve a little bit deeper into our market intelligence services. So CBI has over 30 years of experience in developing high quality market intelligence about the European markets for local SMEs and business support organizations. So this includes market studies, market access requirements, tips, for example, how to find buyers, how to organize your export, product spec sheets on, for example, sustainable materials, and so on. And every year we publish over 300 market studies on our websites. And kindly be informed that all these studies are free of charge. You can easily just download them as well for offline use, and they can be found on our website, www.cbi.eu. And if you can go to the next one, here you have a little bit of a look how the website looks like. So you can simply select the industry, the sector of your interest, and see all the very interesting studies that we have available. I can continue, but for now I would like to give the floor to our next speaker, Frans, to really go more in depth to the main topic of this webinar.
Thank you so much, Merita, for that wonderful introduction. So once again, welcome to the webinar, everyone. My name is Frans Tilstra, and I work as a market researcher for CBI together with Giovanni Beatrice. And before we go to listen to our experts today, who will give us a lot of tips and insights on how to create safe and healthy working conditions, I would like to quickly walk through some of the facts and figures and the issues about working conditions in the worldwide apparel industry. So perhaps you're familiar with the ILO conventions, and these conventions on the protection of labor rights, they basically form the basis for many of the buyer requirements that European buyers have concerning working conditions and socially responsible production. So for instance, the ILO conventions on labor rights, they form the basis for the Ethical Trade Initiative's base code, but also for a lot of the voluntary social standards that many European brands and buyers have, for instance, BSCI, SA 8000 or REP or SEDEX. So you might come across many of the topics that are mentioned in the ILO conventions. And of course, there's also many laws and regulations in Europe that European buyers need to adhere by. So there's national laws and regulations such as the Modern Slavery Act in the UK, or the Duty of Diligence Act in France. The Netherlands has the Child Labor Due Diligence Act, and Germany has the Supply Chain Due Diligence Act. So European buyers, they need to adhere to many legal standards, and often they also have all kinds of, well, basically voluntary standards that you as a supplier need to adhere to as well. So when we look at the ILO conventions on labor rights, it covers very many topics. But it's basically some of the most important topics concern recruitment and hiring. So on this topic, the ILO conventions say, well, you basically can't have forced or bonded labor. Concerning working hours, your employees shouldn't work more hours than is legally allowed. And if they work overtime, they should be fairly compensated. Of course, you need to pay the minimum wage, the minimum legal wage in your country. Child labor, not permitted. In many countries, this is also prohibited by law. but it still might occur in the apparel industry, sometimes deeper in the supply chain, but it does occur. Discrimination of workers on any ground is also not permitted. You need to provide safe working environment to prevent accidents and so that your employees can work safely. And of course, you always need to adhere to your local laws. So some of the benefits of following the ILO conventions and voluntary social standards include the following. So, for instance, working in a socially responsible manner, well, it will increase morale and productivity for your employees, and it will lead to lower absenteeism. It also makes it a lot easier to attract talent and to retain workers. So worker turnover, that's a really big problem in the apparel industry. Of course, this will lead to many financial benefits as well. More productivity, less risk, less cost. And of course, you should always adhere to local laws and regulations to avoid any legal trouble. It would also make it easier to connect with European buyers, because we've already seen that for European buyers, these topics are really, really important in their purchasing practices. And also in the European market, there's ever more awareness among end consumers on these topics. So they are ever more concerned about social environmental impact of the products that they buy. And last but not least, there's also, in many cases, an intrinsic motivation to create a good and healthy working environment for your people and the larger community. So what are some of the issues that are plaguing the apparel industry right now? Well, for one thing, not many people working in the apparel industry currently are earning a living wage. So there's many studies being done on living wage, and the figures, they differ sometimes, but the overall conclusion from most of the investigations on living wage is that the vast majority of apparel workers are not actually earning a living wage. And a living wage, that is a wage that provides people enough money to provide for their family and to cover basic needs. So if you look at what people actually on average earn in most countries in the apparel industry, they would sometimes need to work maybe 2 or 3 jobs to actually earn a living wage. So that is a big problem. Inclusivity, 80% of the apparel workers worldwide are women, so they're female workers, and as a reflection of society in certain production countries, these women have a bad position in society, and that is often reflected in the workplace. So they may face all kinds of discrimination in the workplace as well. In many investigations concerning harassment in the workplace, and that may include physical abuse or emotional abuse, or sometimes even sexual abuse, we see that that apparel workers, they report quite high percentages of daily harassment in the workplace. And the trouble here is that often apparel factories, they don't have the procedures in place for workers to report on this. So they may not feel safe enough to report on abuse because the complaint procedures and mechanisms are not in place, which prevents improvement on this part. Slavery as well. It is estimated that currently around 50 million people are working in some form of bonded labor or slave labor and are being exploited. This may be very far from your everyday experience. I truly hope so. but it still occurs, and it is also estimated that the apparel sector is the second most predominant sector for slave labor after electronics, in fact. And this may not occur in your factory, or you may not even see it or notice it in your environment, but it also may happen deeper in the supply chain. For instance, in cotton farming, it occurs quite a lot. So that is an issue as well. When we look at working conditions, this again is an investigation by the ILO, and they report that 60% of workers are dissatisfied with their working conditions in some sense. So such issues they lead to a workforce that is generally not very happy actually working in the apparel sector. And this is not only bad for people, but it's also bad for business, because another research by the ILO actually reported that 9 out of 10 apparel workers wouldn't wish for their children to have their job later. So yeah, that is quite an issue for the future of the apparel industry worldwide. All these issues are not only bad for people, they're also bad for business. In another report by the ILO, it was estimated that sexual harassment alone in the workplace, and this accounts for many different sectors, not just the apparel sector worldwide, may lead to a yearly loss in GDP of 1 to 3.5%. So that really drives the point home that providing and creating safe and healthy working conditions is not only good for the happiness of your workers, but it's also good for productivity and for running a healthy business in general. So I hope I've set the stage and provided some context for our next speaker, Natasha. Meert already introduced her. She's an expert and a best-selling author on creating a safe and healthy working environment and maintaining a happy and motivated staff. So I would now like to give the floor to Natasha.
Thank you very much, Frans, for welcoming me here. I see in the chat a comment of Jafar that he agrees on everything you just said, and he's looking for hearing some practical solutions. Well, Jafar, I hope I will be one of the guest speakers who will give you some of these tips. I'm shocked by the numbers, by the way, friends. I didn't know it that much. That also shows that I'm not really the one who is very familiar with the apparel industry, but I am familiar with social safe working environments. So let me introduce me a little bit better than what's done yet. I work at the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences, and there I help develop social safety policies. And imagine we're talking about a university of 50,000 students and 5,000 staff members. You can imagine the different backgrounds and experience everybody take in every day, and that sometimes leads to challenges in how people interact, and at times also to social insecurity. So it's a big challenge to have a social working environment with so many people in it. Next to that, I also teach behavior design, and I try to help some companies in the Netherlands. So therefore, I do hope we have some common ground. I visited Ethiopia last year, and there I saw some similarities in what workers say, what would their workplace be a better place. So first of all, we have to agree on what do we mean by social safety? How do people feel protected at work? Well, partly through clear rules, procedures, and safety measures, that's for sure. But it's more than that. It goes beyond. It's also about care and commitment. It's a shared responsibility. So it's not only the leader, but also the workers who have a responsibility in creating this environment. So social safe environment is more than preventing only accidents. It's about creating a culture of care, respect and support, so people can work with confidence and well-being. Next slide, please. And here you see some things which makes it more in detail what a social safe working environment is, where people can be themselves, they can show their experience and be encouraged to learn from mistakes. Open conversations, it sounds simple, and it's one of the hardest I encounter in companies, to have real open conversations. And if this all is missing, the consequences can be serious. Friends already told some of them. You see increasing absence and sick leave, or lower productivity, poor quality of work. If motivation is lack, then the quality also goes down. And above all, especially within the companies I've seen within the Netherlands, you see that there's less innovation if there is no social safe work environment. People are not going for real innovation, they're scared for the mistakes. And if we see, Frans, next, how you build a social safe security. I always do this from 3 pillars. From the promotion part, it's about encouraging the good behavior. So most cases I see that companies, they act as soon as there is bad behavior. But the challenge is, what kind of a behavior do I want to see, and how can I encourage the good behavior? Well, by setting the right example is one of the biggest issues. But talking about behavior, we are very common to talk about the product or about the process, but we're not very common to talk about behavior. We talk about the why and the what, but not how do we do it together. But it's also about enforcing some rules. That's what promotion is about. Take action when it's needed, not just thinking, well, it will go away, it will end up, or they will solve it themselves. So rewarding the good and showing some appreciation of the good and the positive behavior is what's in the promotion part. If we look at the prevention part, it's, do you know the risk? Are you able to spot some risk, what leads to unsafe or harmful behavior? Is it transparency, or is it the environment, how it's the safety of the environment itself? Is there some gender issue? What are some specific risks in your context that might lead to some harmful behavior? But the prevention, of course, is also about building the support system. Think of the complaint procedures or the helplines. How much is that in line? How good are the workforce familiar with these helplines? And in what way do you involve people? How much responsibility in creating this environment together do you give them? Do they have a say in decisions, in working hours, in tasks, or in whatever? And the last part is about the follow-up. It's a 3rd pillar of building this social safety structure. And this is, what do you do when it goes wrong? Is there a step-by-step clear process? Do you know what to do? Do you know how to have this conversation if something goes wrong? Is there a human relations cycles of feedback, of yearly conversations on progress, on job development? What is the follow-up on if something goes wrong? And is it fair and transparent how your follow-up is, or is it indifferent for the one and the other? How do you learn from the things that go wrong in behavior? So if I look at these 3 pillars, I'm curious what you would like to be working on. So in the poll, in the next slide, you can see the question of where do I want to be more active on promoting a social safety culture, on preventing, on protocols, systems, and actors, or on the third pillar, the follow up. And maybe Frans or Camille, you can see what's happening on how many people would like to work on A, B, or C. But anyway, I will walk through each of the pillars now a little bit more closely. And give you...
Natasha, I see that promoting a social safety culture and behavior is in the lead by far, with 71%
nice.
currently, and the other two both are lagging a little bit behind, prevention and follow-ups with 14%.
Ah, nice. I think I did not expect that, because it would almost say, I think it's very hard for me in the Netherlands to convince companies of the importance of the promoting pillar, because the business is going as usual and everybody is busy, and then something happens and they go from A to Z just into the follow-up, and after that I will always have the story about, but what was it in your culture that made this behavior possible? So what is it you want to see, and how much do you know of that? Well, let's look into this promotional social safety. So we start with the culture. That's what it's about. And it's not that strange that culture is a bigger topic, because all around the world we see more awareness of the inappropriate behavior. Think of the movements like Black Lives Matter. We have more attention for this inappropriate behavior. We are seeking for a new norm, I think, worldwide at the moment. We would like to learn more about finding this new balance in how to promote a respectful and positive behavior. And you can look at your own culture by thinking of what kind of language is used. How do people treat each other in my company? Or what are the values they share? That are the first signs of, you can say, of how people behave day to day. For example, I can see in companies that new people, they have ideas and they share them in the beginning, and then they got shut down, like, that's not a good idea, or you are new, what do you know? Then you take away the confidence and the freedom of giving it next time. It's better, it's safer to stay quiet instead of sharing your idea. So you can look at behavior like it's above the line and below the line behavior. And I think it's clear that we all would look for behavior which is above the line, which is more an open, curious, sharing behavior than what is below the line, like blaming, like closeness, like we don't act, we are reacting, we are not innovating now, we are just coping with what's known, what's familiar, we're not trying to seek for new things. So you can check your own position if you see all these behaviors, like, where am I? It's like in the next slide you can see this question of where am I in the above or in the below line. When I work with companies, we do this checking of this, how do you say it? We measure a 0 point. From which point are we going to work on promoting social safety? Where am I standing now? And we measure it just by doing things like this, like checking on what level I'm standing now. And after that, we're going to look for what are the key factors for promoting social safety. So in the next slide, you can see some of the key factors that are promoting it, like the working environment. Are people heard? Are they learning from mistakes? Are they in what way are they working together? Is there some kind of camaraderie in the work environment? The next one is work-life balance. Do we have some flexible hours? Do I have some responsibility that I can decide over my own hours when I spend them? In Ethiopia, I saw last year that some companies are offering flexible hours. So workers, specific one worker who had to travel to a very neighborhood into the dark, which she was not feeling safe about, so her flexible hours were offered so she could travel by light and do some work from out of the house. And another company was testing whether it was doable for mothers who had just got labored to have some remote work. So there is a lot of experience in this, and it is one of the important points for how people feel social safe. Is there some caring for the concerns I have in my personal life, like taking care of elders and kids? The other one is the career development. Everybody comes to work, and we do have some path we see for ourselves next to having the earning day by day for the day-by-day living, but we also have talents we want to explore in life. So in what way can you cope with the ambitions of workers? Do you even know them? And this last one, which is maybe the biggest one of importance, but much of the time it's not considered. People want to feel valued. You and I, we want to feel valued if we do something. We want to be part of something bigger. Sometimes it's enough to be part of a group, but sometimes it's even more interesting to be part of a company that is aiming for something good, like Patagonia does, for giving the something about the earth and how I do this. Or I saw a company who's only giving jobs to mothers who are alone and have no partner anymore. So just being part of something which is valued for what I do, but also being part of something bigger. That are the key factors of promoting social safety. But the first one where it all starts is the role of the management. Although everyone is responsible for a social safe environment, leadership does play a key role. If people don't trust their management, they will not be speaking up. It's as simple as that. So your part, if you are a leader or a manager, don't underestimate what your role is. It's about giving the example. It's about asking. It's about giving notice of the concerns of the employees. So if we look at these open at the tips of this in the next slide, you can really work concrete on these topics like open communication. As a manager, you can show this. You can be the example of doing this. You can organize regular short team meetings just to update or also to listen to them. I spoke to one company, I think it was Cabana, and the new manager there, he introduced that he would join every break of the workers, every break from coffee, tea to lunch. And in the beginning, nobody was speaking. It was a little bit weird he was there. So I asked what was his intention to do so. And he said to me, I just want to know their day-to-day concerns, because that's what their life is. And I feel some way responsible that work has to fit in that day-to-day life of them. So if I don't know it, I cannot arrange things for them. So I have to close the gap of that I'm the manager, but you can still tell me your worries and your concerns. I thought it was a great example of how a manager was improving a different relationship with his employees. but let workers help decide, also in schedules, in processes, or in improvements. They do have ideas about how to build the process and what can be better done on the quality. They do have the ideas, but create the environment where they want to share their ideas. And of course, it's one of the a primary tip: be fair and clear about how you pay, what you pay, what the progress in payment can be. It's often one of the excuses what I saw where people leave, the payment is too low, but then they were asked for a bigger pay. And sometimes there is space, sometimes there's not, but it's not always transparent. So in this fairness, it's also the transparency of the payment. And the last one, but not the least one, is show care. Don't just organize rules, but create some support on things, not just the rules. But then they have also their own role. And the role of the colleagues is that the relationship between workers also matter. Do people feel close to their teammates? In the next slide, you see that this role is one of the major, next to the role of the management. They also have a role of how close are they together? Can they be themselves? How can you, as a manager, maybe improve this relationship between these employees? Because if there is a relationship between the employees, there is also more a reason to come to work and not be absent. If there is some dependency on me for my colleagues, I would be earlier on my work. So team building is very important, not only in sharing lunches, games, or celebrations, but also in how you create your product line. How's the process? One of the participants in Ethiopia, he changed the product line just in a team line. So in every team, there was a person who would taking the fabrics, the other one was preparing, the next one was cutting, the next one was sewing, and the fifth one was doing the quality research, and together they were responsible for the product. And it made them dependent on each other. It made also that they saw each other working. It made also that they gave each other feedback. So sometimes changing something in the structure makes that they are giving them feedback and they're becoming a more of a team. It's also nice if you come new somewhere that there is some buddy and some mentorship system in the company. And of course, also just celebrate some success. If there is an order, or if there is a great feedback from a client, celebrate it together and feel them make proud of what they do. So that's about the promotion part, the pillar of social safety structure. You also have this part, the prevention of social insecurity. This is about how to spot some problems early. It's about finding the risks before they grow. And Frans already told about the tough conditions in the apparel industry, so it's very important in your work environment. Like he said, 60% of the workers report that they have dissatisfaction due to the working conditions. So, yeah, it's incredible that there are only 38 people in this webinar. If you see these numbers, they tell a lot. And I was curious, what would you write in one word if you could eliminate one poor condition of your work to make you or your employees feel happier? What would it be? On the next slide, you see this question, and I would like you to put this one word in the chat. In the Netherlands, I often see the word workload, which leads to stress or poor communication. But I'm wondering what it will be in your, what you will be writing. Fixed working hours, I can see. Okay. On the next slide, you see some fronts. Can you see some in the chat?
No, I don't see any responses yet.
Okay. Well, I put them also.
Perhaps I'm
under the questions. There are some responses. Communication, flexible working hours, be a mentor and a buddy. I see.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's what I've put also in the next slide. The poor working conditions we can see. We can see something about the inadequate safety measures when machines are not maintained, the gear is not safe, or there's no talk about safety. Sometimes you work, I've heard, with material which is poison or which is not healthy for you. In what way do you tell them? Are you open about it? The unhygienic workspaces are mentioned. We did a survey in Ethiopia, and these are the results which came out, like the excessive work hours. And sometimes it's hard. I can see both sides. If there is an order, sometimes it needs excessive work hours, but it's sometimes you just expect from your workers without creating the possibility of, are you able to do, or what do you need to help me make this workload happen. The insufficient compensations sometimes related to the excessive work hours. If they work late, are not able to go home, sleep at the workplace, are not compensated for that. Yeah, so sometimes it's also just in the compensation. The poor communication is one who's mentioned a lot in the Netherlands, and that is all about training, meeting regularly, and listening. So we all have to learn a lot about how we do communicate. If we look at some tips to improve this workplace safety, it's sometimes really simple in just providing good chairs. I visited a lot of factories, and I saw different chairs or lighting, or even how hot it is. Is there some ergo, or are there windows that can close or can open? But it's also about the best grievance mechanism. You have to put them in place just for each unique circumstances. You need to be sure that there are forums, surveys. How do you just get your information from your workers? What policies do you have? What kind of mechanisms you have? Are there some people you can go to if you have an harassment? What is in your toolkit? How do you guide the people? How do you inform them about the grievance system toolkit? Is it only hanging there, or are you having a couple of years a meeting about the hazard-free spaces, or about the ergonomics? So it's very important to work on all these aspects. Clear safety policies, personal protective equipment, safety inspections, reviews. Is there a well-stocked first aid kit in the house? Is there easy access to medical facilities? Is there a reporting safety system? Are there people who can help if someone wants to report? So you can do a lot in this. The third pillar is about the follow-up. Well, that was one which was not mentioned a lot in the poll. And although I understand it's not mentioned a lot, I see a lot of, how do you say it, that leaders are not very familiar with having conversations if someone had a sexual harassment. What do you know of the impact of a sexual harassment? How easy is it to talk about? What are the psychological barriers to talk about those things? If you don't know them, it's very hard to have a conversation about it. So in the follow-up, it's very good for leaderships, for managers to know how to have a conversation if someone doesn't feel social safe. There are a lot of psychological barriers. So in this part, you have to be fair and you have to be impartial about who it is. If I have not convinced you yet by working on social safety, I just want to have my last slide about the why. Do you still think that social safety is a luxury or is it a necessity? What are the challenges you face? And maybe improving on the working environment could help solving those points. I want to thank you for your attention. I want to give my time to Giovanni, who's going to talk about worker happiness from his experience all over the place. It's your floor, Giovanni.
Thank you, Natasha. Okay, my name is Giovanni Beatrice, and together with my partner Serge Leon and our team, we help, advise, support factories in several countries. I think approximately 60 factories in total right now, mainly SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises. And we do this on behalf of CBI. And next slide, Hans. Yeah, so I remember the first time when I started to think about workers' happiness, and that was in 2014. It was my first program on behalf of CBI in Myanmar. And I was talking to this factory owner, and I noticed that there was one Dutch company doing production in her factory. And I was asking about this Dutch company. I was curious. And I asked, so how are they doing and how do they do business? Are they friendly or not? And she said, oh, my workers love to produce for this Dutch company. And I said, why? What do you mean? Why specifically for this Dutch company? What about the others? I said, why? And she said, well, every time the owner comes and visits us, he walks through the production line and he starts to compliment the workers. He puts the hand on their shoulder, say, well, I'm happy with you. You're doing such a great job. And that creates a connection and a commitment from my workers, and they love to produce for them. And that's where I started to realize the importance of appreciation, the importance and impact you can have as an individual in your business. And by just such a relatively small thing that can have such a big impact. And that's the first time in 2014 I started to think about workers' happiness, which is a relatively new topic in the industry. It exists. People work on it. Some people do a great job. Some people only think about their production. And that's why we want to highlight it and show the importance of working on workers' happiness. Another reason is what you see here. These are the statistics. And this is just parts, but this is not globally, but we just took out different countries. And you can see that there is a skill shortage. There's lack of workers. Yeah? Even though some countries have 100 million inhabitants, you might think finding workers is easy, but still it's a challenge. And why? Because other industries have developed. Internet industry has developed. Yeah, hardware industry has developed. And if people can choose, they don't want to work in our industry sitting behind a sewing machine for 8 or 10 hours per day. They're not interested. And that's a challenge. That is the biggest threat for manufacturing. You might think automation is the solution, but it's not. We still need workers to manufacture our clothing. So next slide. Okay, the challenge. High turnover and low worker satisfaction. It is still cheaper, if we look at it from a business perspective, to invest and keep your workers than to find and develop new workers. So investing in creating this safe and friendly working environment is worthwhile doing. Trying to find new workers every season, every month is a big headache, especially in season. And what we see happening is that now with all these global challenges we're facing of increasing import duties and so on, we see that investments are made in manufacturing countries that have free trade agreements, for example. We see a big investments going into Egypt, for example. We see big investments going into countries like Morocco, Tunisia, more nearby. And of course, that's a good thing. The industry develops, but often these are big organizations, very profitable, able to pay above minimum wage salary, able to pay above average salary in a specific country. So what happens is that if the job only depends on salary, if the only reason why you stay in a company to work is based on your salary and somebody else will pay you more, you leave. So we need to make sure that it's not only about the money. Difficulties in maintaining long-term productivity, that's the challenge. You know, if you need to work with a lot of new workers every month or every half year, how can you maintain quality? How can you maintain productivity? And a growing gap between management and workers' expectations. Yeah, and I explain that later on in my presentation. Next slide. So the first step, how to keep your workers happy. Next one. Working conditions. I took this picture from the internet, and you might think this is very uncommon, and I agree. If you walk into big factories, this is not a common picture, but I can tell you that a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises have similar working conditions. And a funny thing to see is that standard thing is that they have somebody to wipe the floors and clean the cutting waste, for example, that's left around in the factory. But they have nobody to clean the windows. For me, that's always a surprise. Or they haven't trained their workers to clean their working space after working hours. Yeah. So a clean working environment gives you the feeling when you walk in of, you know, this is nice, this is motivating, this is, you know, a good place to be at. And if you allow one person to have a dirty work spot, I tell you, everybody will follow. Yeah, so you need to be very consistent in making sure that the working environment is clean. Next slide. Okay. I have a lot of discussions with company about workers' happiness, and I ask them, so what do you do? And then I often get the remark, well, you know, we are one big family. Oh, wow, amazing. So what do you do to make it one big family? Well, Giovanni, the factory owner says, my door is always open for all my workers. Anybody that has a complaint can come in. Okay. So, and what else? Well, we pay bonus. If the worker works hard, they get rewarded. There's more money. Okay. So how many complaints did you have in the last 6 months? We have no complaints. No, everybody's happy in our factory. We have no complaints. So tell me, how is it possible that if you have 500 workers, you have 0 complaints? It's impossible. It means that the complaint procedure, the grievance mechanism, does not work. Apparently, people do not feel safe to complain, and that's when people start to think, and they think, "Oh, my intention is there. I want the environment to be safe for everybody. Apparently, it's not working." And yes, I hear nothing. I hear no complaints, but it doesn't mean there are no complaints. So, creating an environment, a safe environment, is step one. Creating policies and procedures in case of things happening is step 2. Policies and procedures is not the solution to your problem. A safe working environment is the solution. So when we look at this picture, you see a manager yelling, yeah, and this is not uncommon in a factory. Where we work with people, you have to handle emotions, yeah, and it's not only about stress-related work environment emotions, it's also about private problems that you'll bring to your work. So it's very important that you train your management team, that at least in the way people are treated, you are aligned. You cannot have people managing in different ways, because you will see it will impact. I one time had a discussion with a factory about the use of the mobile phone. And I said, I see that people are using the mobile phone. Yes, oh, Gio, that's a big problem. You know, we don't want to, but they do. I said, but why? Well, I asked this manager, and he said, well, you know, it's not a problem they use a mobile phone, because currently the machine is being replaced. So that's why she's sitting behind the table using a mobile phone. I said, okay, well, what's the rule? The rule is no mobile phones. I said, okay, why doesn't it work? Yeah, well, you know, different managers, different thoughts and ideas. I said, okay, so what about smoking? Are people allowed to smoke in the production line? No, smoking is not allowed. But does it happen? No, it does not happen. They go to designated areas on specific times to smoke. I said, but why is not smoking successfully implemented, but not using the telephone? It's not possible. Where's the difference? And then people start to think, yeah, and it often has to do with alignment in your management team. Next slide, Hans. Yeah, okay, let's, we have a poll. I'm very curious to your replies. So please launch the questionnaire. Money is more important to keep workers loyal, yeah, especially now with inflation and high costs, or friendly working environment is more important than money. So please choose. I can see 33% money is more important, 69% friendly working environment is more important than money. Okay, let's go back to the presentation and I'll try to explain. Can I see the presentation, Frans? Can you share it? No, back. Yes. Okay. So I always give an example. Yeah. I one time got an offer from a company to work. Big money. Yeah. I was young. I thought, wow, it was actually a German company. And I thought, this is a big improvement. So I left. I left my company where I worked for many, many years, and I started to work for a German company. It was big money. Within 6 months, I was so unhappy. I didn't feel appreciated. There was so much pressure. It was not my company. And then suddenly money was no longer important. And I left within 6 months, because money will not keep you as an employee if you're unhappy. And if somebody has a working environment, it has a factory that they work with, and they earn above average, but they're very unhappy, they will leave. If somebody gets rewarded below market average, but everybody are their friends and it's so happy and family and oh, amazing, nice working environment, people will stay. I'm not saying it's this or that, it needs to be both. Yeah, especially now with increasing cost, money is important, but even more important is the friendly working environment. Next slide. Okay. You need to ask yourself some questions. Do I know what truly motivates my workers? And there is a difference here. As I told you, we work with small and medium-sized enterprises. And these are often companies where the owner is still very active, perhaps 50 workers, 100 workers, and I guarantee you often they know everybody. They connect to everybody, they know the people, they know their background because the company is small. But over time, companies have grown towards 1,000 workers, and then things get challenging. So if you don't have a structure there, it's impossible to know each and every one if you have 1,000 workers. So we need to think about how can we create a structure so I'm aware what motivates my workers. Understanding individual needs is an important one, but how if you have 1,000 workers? Open up a real dialogue with your team. Yes, team level is important, as I explained. Aligning your management is important. Trying to make your management understand what are your values, what do you think is important as a person, as a factory owner is important. But how do you do it with your entire factory of 1,000 workers? That's where it becomes challenging. Next one. Okay, so know your workers. Next slide. Interview your workers regularly. We in the Netherlands are by law obliged to have an interview yearly to talk about different subjects. Of course, often work related, but not always work related. So one of my advices is, even if you have a factory of 1,000 workers, make sure your HR department has a meeting with the workers once a year. And you talk about 3 focus areas. 1, the personal situation. 2, the ambitions and dreams. 3, feedback on working conditions. So this conversation is not about me as a manager telling you what you do wrong. Yeah, prevent it. This is about gaining information on these 3 subjects of this specific worker, because we need it in order to create a safe working environment and workers' happiness. Next slide. So know your workers. Personal situation is so important. As Natasha already gave in a practical example, a lady leaves the factory late. It's dark, she feels unsafe. Most probably she will leave because it's not workable. So you don't want people to leave. So best thing is to know about this problem and then to act upon it. If it's company small, it's relatively easy. If it's company big, it becomes more difficult. The only way possible to understand the personal challenges is by one-on-one conversations, and this can be anything. Transport, it takes me 1.5 hours to get to work with public transportation. Okay, well, perhaps I can connect you with this other worker who lives in the same area, you can travel together. Okay, I have a child, a young child, I don't have any family that can take care, so I'm struggling with daycare, which prevents me from coming to work. Okay, let's talk. Yeah, so and every individual has specific problems. We are not there to solve each and every problem, yeah, but at least try to think in solutions. Next slide. So, ambitions and dreams. This is an important one. Everybody has ambitions and dreams. And I had a discussion with one factory owner and he was not aware. So I went through his factory and I gathered some people around and said, if there's one thing you can do, what do you want to do? And they said, oh, we want to learn English. How easy is that? How satisfying is that if you as a manager can give a training course in English and teach your workers to speak English? How amazing is that? Yeah, but you need to be aware of what they want, of their ambition. Let's say a worker wants to be a manager and not just sitting behind a sewing machine. And then after a couple of years, she or he is a great worker, suddenly leaves to work as a line manager in another factory. I would be so frustrated. My good worker has left. I didn't know that she or he wanted to become a line manager and they just left. That's a big mistake within the structure of your organization. I want to start my own business. Well, many people think of it as a threat. Yeah, you will do the same thing as me, but think of it as an opportunity. Why not give this person the ability, the possibility to start their own business and do it together? Yeah. One other mistake also companies often make is when people leave, they say, go away, you never can come back anytime, anymore. And that is a big mistake, because young people need to look around. You will understand how good it is what you have if you have also experienced other situations. If I'm young, graduated, just went to work for this amazing company, how do I know this company is amazing if I haven't worked for rubbish other companies? I cannot compare. So give them the possibility to compare and then let them come back. So don't close the door permanently. Know your workers, know their ambition and dreams, and act upon it. Next slide. Feedback on working conditions. This is not about me as a manager telling you you're doing a lousy job. This is about trying to understand from the workers what we as a factory can improve. Yeah. And looking for a part-time job. I don't want to be working full-time. I had my oldest son, when he started to work, he said, Dad, I don't want to work 5 days a week. I want to work only 4 days a week. And I looked at him and I said, are you my son? Are you crazy? What are you talking about? 4 days a week. Everybody works 5 days a week. How can you say you're not working? You want to work 4 days a week? That's not realistic. Now he's on a management team of a big multinational company working 4 days a week. My mistake. So we need to understand what people want, and we need to see how we can implement it into our organization. Things like free lunch can also make a big difference. Childcare can really make a big difference. And perhaps you as an organization are too small. You only have 50 employees, of which 20 women. You cannot invest in a childcare. Then make a combination with other factories. Do it together. Yeah. So you don't need to find a solution for every problem. You don't need to invest in a solution on your own only. Next one. What can you do as a management? Make personal connections compliments. And as I explained, it can be a simple thing. Put a hand on the shoulder of somebody saying, oh, I like what you're doing. You're doing a great job. Or after the interviews, all your workers have been interviewed. Take out 5. Take out 5, one with an ambition, one with a personal problem, and help those persons, because this will spread around. People will know you care. People want to be seen, heard, valued, and appreciated. That's how you give them not only the feeling, but that's how you do it also. Stimulate the family feeling by organizing company events. We have a great example of a factory in Tunisia that is really very passionate about this. And there was a very funny story of another factory that decided, I talked to them, they decided to organize a barbecue. And then they said, well, we needed to organize actually 2 barbecues. I said, why 2 barbecues? He said, well, my managers don't want to have the barbecue together with the workers. I said, come on, but that's crazy. The barbecue is there to connect. And now you're separating, you're highlighting the difference between being a manager and being a worker. I understand there are cultural challenges, and for me, it's easy to talk, but it's important that don't expect the family feeling to be there. Yeah, make sure you invest in creating this family feeling. And this means sometimes a cultural mindset change. Support the weak and support the ambitious. Yeah, next one. So what can you do as a management? For example, team building activities. When I travel around in China, many of the factories started each morning with exercises. With all the workers outside, they stood there in lines and they started to do, all the exercises just to give this positive, the day has started vibe, and let's go for it. Yeah. But you can also think about going on a day trip together, or perhaps playing basketball, create teams. The mistake people make is, well, you are the team leader because in our factory you are the manager. No, make the manager the team player, make the worker the team leader. Turn around responsibilities in these events. This will connect people. Yeah. Encourage bottom-up feedback. So make sure if you say you have an open door policy, you're open for everybody, don't wait for people to come to you. Go and talk to the people about specific challenges also. Yeah, that way they understand that your door is open, yeah, and they are able to come to you with any challenge. And connection across all levels builds loyalty. So don't separate management from workers, because then you highlight that there is some kind of difference between both, which is not there actually. Next one. So next generation, I've been talking about a lot about the next generation, and I have 4 children. So I'm confronted with them almost daily, and with their different thoughts and ideas. And they're called Gen Z, digital natives, Generation Zoomer. So it's the next generation of textile workers, textile entrepreneurs that we depend on in order to be able to continue our business. So next slide. They are different. My son looks sometimes as a person from outer space because he is so different. The mindset is different. What they do is different. I went to play soccer outside. They play soccer only on their computer, yeah, on their PlayStation. They are connected to iPads. Of course, they promote what they feel is important on TikTok. They have a Facebook community. They're very open-minded. They don't want to buy a house or have a car or get married and children. No, I want to travel. I want to work 5 months and then travel 7 months a year. You know, that's what they want. They want everything fast. Yeah. They're bored fast also. When they look at a movie, after a couple of minutes, they want something else. Yeah, they do 10 things at one time, and they care about sustainability. And that's, you know, roughly the priorities of the Gen Z, of the next generation. So what do we do? Because they're so different with my old school way of thinking, and probably many other factory owners also. So how can we create an environment where they fit in? That's a challenge. Next one. Okay, so technology is second nature. Yeah, they need flexibility. They are bored fast. Work to live, not live to work. That's an important one. Yeah, so they want to earn money because they want to spend money. Yeah, and not the other way around. They adapt to change quickly. Yeah, they're very fast. They have a solution for everything because they've seen this TikTok movie, or you know, they are connected to the entire world. Need for diversity and inclusion. So they want to feel connected to different kind of people with different kind of backgrounds, which they do also online. The world is their group of friends, and the need for continuous feedback and recognition. So how do you do it? If you have a factory with 1,000 workers, how can you provide this? So important thing is, don't ask yourself how the young workers should adapt to your organization, but how your organization should adapt to the young workers. The mistake we make as factory owners is, I have a factory, I have rules, I have regulations, and if you want to work in my factory, you need to follow my rules and regulations, because this is how I have been doing it for many, many, many years. That's a mistake. That's not how you will attract the next generation. Next one. Okay, need for fast communication. So let's get back to the story on using the mobile phone in the production process. People are calling, you know, people are looking on Facebook. It's distracting. Don't forget, the young generation is able to do several things at the same time. Driving while sending messages, for example, big problem. Yeah. So just imagine you have a sewing machine, and connected to the sewing machine is a digital application, as you can see here. And I'm sitting behind the sewing machine and I'm doing a good job. Yeah, I'm happy, I'm working fast, my quality is good, and suddenly I receive a thumbs up from my big boss on my screen. He says, Gio, so happy with you, you're doing a great job. I would feel like on top of the world, right? The big boss gives me a compliment. Yeah, so we need to ask ourselves, how can we implement the digital environment into our entire factory, and not only measure speed and measure performance and measure mistakes, but I'm talking about communication here. I'm talking about enabling people to use their phone, but not reducing their work or impacting their work. Yes, impacting their environment, but in a positive way. Next one. Building a community online and offline. So offline community is by doing things together. Yeah. Many factories have a basketball court outside. So in lunch, during lunch, workers go outside, they create a team and they start playing a game. That's already a start of an offline community. People playing together, you know, connects. So how can we do it online? I was in one factory and they had this Facebook page where only people working in their factory were allowed to join. So if a new person, also a 1,000 workers factory, if a new person was hired, they did an introduction video. So what's your name? What are you doing? What are your hobbies? Where do you come from? Are you married? So like a personal interview. They shared it on their company platform. Everybody immediately know, hey, there's a new worker. Oh yeah, background information, how nice. And they already felt connected. Then the manager sees an interesting innovation in their product category. He shares it on a community. So he educates his workers. Look what's happening here. And the workers get inspired. Yeah. Or personal messages from the managers, not only from the managers to the workers, but also from the workers to each other on this online community. It's a really interesting way to connect also online with all of the people attached to your organization. Next one. Okay, why workers' happiness pays off. If you go to your work happy, then there is lower absenteeism and turnover. Yeah, if people feel like, oh, I need to work again today, most likely they will also call in sick much more easier. Or somebody else makes them a big promise, you get more money and we are such a nice company, and they will leave. You don't want that. Yeah, this is the biggest gain: lower absenteeism and turnover rate. Improve product quality and consistency. People will care. If I make a mistake, oh, I cannot pass it to the next one. I need to inform management that I made this mistake, the line manager, because in the end, the product is wrong. And I take responsibility of the entire product. Yeah. Enhance reputation with buyers. I tell you that you can feel as a buyer when you enter a factory if the working environment is nice, if the working environment is inspiring. You feel it if you enter a factory. People are smiling, people are connecting with you without even talking. So this will have a positive impact on the feeling the buyer has working with you as a factory. Stronger employee engagement and productivity. Yes, that's the feeling responsibility. Even as just a simple worker behind a sewing machine, we are all the same. We share the same goal, which is we want quality products and we want our buyers to be happy. Next one. So what do you do as a manager? How can we go from this theory to practical steps? Always a challenge. Yeah, I advise you, I challenge you all. Try to focus on one thing and start doing it. Yeah. So what can we do? Identify one way to connect with your workers this month. Yeah. Do it. Go to talk to a new worker, or I don't know, if you know somebody is a good soccer player, take a ball, invite them to go outside and play one-on-one, or try to find a way to work with one of your workers, to connect with one of your workers this month. Schedule your first workers feedback session. Yeah, this can be, for example, in Teams. This can be arranged by your HR, but you need to show them that it's safe to speak out. Yeah, just a grievance mechanism means nothing if the people feel unsafe. They will never use it if the workers feel unsafe. Start a small monthly team event tradition. Can be online, can be offline, can be with a prize to win, or but just something that motivates people to be engaged. Reflect on how your management style support workers' well-being. Ask yourself, and you might not even understand. You think, oh, I'm such a friendly person, but for some people you're big and scary because you are the boss, especially young, unexperienced workers, even though you're very friendly. Yeah. So ask yourself, looking in the mirror, how do people see me? From young to old, from experienced to unexperienced. And how do you want people to look at you? Next one. that's my presentation. I hope I kept within the time, and we have some time left for questions and answers. So I hope you have some challenging, exciting questions to ask. Are there any questions? Camille, do you want to share some questions?
If I look in the chat, I don't see any questions. I see in the question section a comments by Louisa.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just me, but the phrase of one big family is disliking by employees because working is transactional and sometimes not permanent. Not sure if you have something to say about that, Giovanni.
Well, that's a discussion. I honestly, I hear 90% of the factory owners always say we are a family. Yeah, and I understand it's yeah, business is transactional. I agree upon that, but it's and perhaps we are one big family is the wrong description. Yeah, but it needs to be both actually, and people need to feel safe, and by feeling safe and by experiencing a friendly working environment, it's not the same as family. I agree upon that, but it needs to be both. Transactional is not only related to money if it concerns work. So if I want to ask the 39 attendees a question. If you now go back to your company or your working environment, is there anything that you picked out from the presentation where you feel, well, I'm going to try it? You know, let's or consider even. Is there any action that you think could add to creating an improved working condition within your personal working environment?
Besides, Giovanni, just another question came in from Attila Kaman. They say, yes. Hello, Giovanni, thank you for your presentation. I think it's important to talk about management in different cultures, as in Arabic countries.
Yes.
Yeah, I know you also have some working experience in Arabic countries. So perhaps.
Yes, I agree. Again, for us, it's easy to come up with amazing solutions. It doesn't always mean it's possible if things are related to culture. Yeah, I one time asked a question when I was in Ethiopia. Okay, if the woman goes out to work and the man stays home to take care of the children, is that allowed? And then this person replied, no, people will judge, the community will judge. This will not be possible. Of course, in our country, who cares who works and brings in the money? You know, nobody will judge. But in other countries, there is judgment. So it doesn't always mean that what we think is right is also implementable in all cultures and all countries. We need to consider that. Yeah. Well, if you have a question,
interrupt, maybe I think to follow up on this, but maybe this is an interesting question for Natasha, because I actually see in one of the questions someone who's quite curious about how to set up a feedback system. Could you maybe share your experience, what you think is a good system for collecting honest worker feedback, and how should factory owners act on it and to show that they're actually listening? And especially maybe in an environment where there is some kind of cultural hierarchical barriers.
Well, there are several systems of gaining the feedback. If you want to do an anonymous feedback, you can do it with a survey. And then you can have a meeting of what did you find in the survey and on what 3 most important topics we will work together on as a company. You can have, just as Giovanni said, just one-to-one conversations, but don't do it just once, make it a regular conversation cycling of the HR system. Yeah, I think if I do it with companies, we try to have and at the beginning or at the end of a meeting, just make it a firm start of a meeting or an ending of just talking about behavior. What are we doing well? What can we do better? Not the scariness of what do I do wrong? No, what can we do better? And they're trying to get the openness. And just keep in mind, it's a process. It's not just one moment and you are socially safe. It's the process that takes sometimes years, because behavior is something that's grown in years. So we also have to create new habits, and habits just take time.
All right, thank you. So maybe then one more question, because we're almost reaching the end of this webinar, maybe to you, Giovanni, because we are also CBI, we are focusing a lot on exporting to Europe, and we know that apparel factories, they work in a very cost-sensitive environment. So what would you say, how can, for example, factory owners, how can they maybe even encourage their buyers to also support investment in worker well-being? What would you say are certain suggestions? How can factories also encourage the buyers to be part of this whole discussion?
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, first of all, be transparent. Yeah. If I ask somebody, hey, how are you doing? The standard reply is always great. Yeah. But we all have challenges. So if you have a challenge on creating a happy working environment for your workers, but also a solution, discuss this openly with your buyer and say, listen, I have this idea, I want to do this and this and this, and I would love to have your guidance and support on it. Is that open for discussion? And not everybody will feel so engaged, but perhaps there will be one or two that will say, yes, of course, we can do it together. We'll make it a nice project, and it would be really nice to see the outcome of this initiative. That would be my advice.
Right, excellent. I think if there are no more questions, I think we've reached the end of this webinar. Am I missing any more questions? No, right, Frans? Maybe a final question here on the chat.
One last question. There was an interesting question from An Huang. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. About the connection with buyers and reporting back to buyers, because as we know, many different buyers, they use many different standards and many different reporting tools, so that creates a problem for suppliers. So the question is there any tool or any procedure to make it easier for suppliers to consolidate, so to speak, their reporting back to buyers?
Yeah, let me reply on that. It's always challenging. Buyers have requirements, yeah, legal requirements and non-legal requirements, and they educate their workers because their factories, because they want the factories to comply to their requirements. Yeah. But what we must not forget is that you as a factory also have the obligation to educate your buyer. Because the more the buyer understands what manufacturing really means and what it means to have not enough orders off season and the impact it can have, or too many orders during season and the impact it can have, and your environmental challenges and local legislation. So the more you educate your buyers, the better they understand what they're asking you, and the better they understand your challenges. So it's not only about the buyer educating the factory, but just as important, the factory educating the buyer.
Maybe just one last very practical tip from my side would be to check out the CBI website. There's also a short study on how to become a socially responsible supplier, which contains very many practical tips also on reporting back to buyers and on initiatives to consolidate reporting methods, so to make it easier for you as a factory to connect and report with buyers. It's on cbi.eu.
I just would like to highlight one last thing, and that's a message from Louise Muna, and she says, for a work and life balance, and that is our global challenge, the balance between work and life, and it needs to be healthy, and it can change. So, but it's very important. Yeah.
Thank you for that last message, Giovanni. And with that being said, we hereby close the webinar. We have reached the end. So I would like to extend once again a very warm gratitude from CBI for all our speakers for sharing their insightful experience and knowledge on this topic. I think we can, of course, always continue on this topic, but I think we have made a very good start. And I hope you have all enjoyed everything that we discussed about, and that this topic is now also really on top of your minds, understanding really the importance and giving you some kind of practical steps on how to implement it within your organization. So thank you so much. We will also share the recording of this webinar afterwards, and kindly please and complete the survey after closing this webinar. And therefore, thank you so much, and I wish you all a very happy rest of the afternoon. Bye.
Doei Mirte.